For those who don't know what Storypath Ultra games are, here's a list of them up here. All of them will be covered in this video as I'm just covering the core system itself. There are timestamps down below and chapters if you wish to skip ahead and use this as reference material for yourself so that you can learn the system. There are three main pillars of the Storypath Ultra system. You have investigation, combat, and influence. Today we're covering investigation. An investigation roll is a standard skill check that you might have for Storypath Ultra. So you roll a skill plus an attribute, and depending on how well you roll, you'll uncover leads and evidence. Whenever you roll an investigation roll, you're always going to get a lead, which will help you progress the plot. They're essentially milestones for the plot. If you're doing, say, a murder mystery, a lead gets you progressively closer and closer to where the murderer is, whereas evidence is a piece of information that adds context or insight into a mystery. So, for instance, where a milestone might be you found where the murderer was hiding after they committed the crime, a piece of evidence might be the murder weapon or a note left by the murderer. Mechanics-wise, leads act as milestones that, once you get to the last one, is solving the mystery, or in the case of the murderer, it would be cornering them, probably. Evidence, however, grants a mechanical benefit that is a +1 enhancement that stacks to rolls associated with it. So if you find a piece, say the murder weapon or something, that might give you a +1 enhancement on persuasion checks when you're interrogating someone. Not everything needs to be an investigation, so even though your players might be asking questions, you don't need to use the investigation system for it, but I do find the investigation system very beneficial for me as a story guide to let my players do cool things. Investigation rolls are normal skill check rolls, so you add your dots of skill plus attribute together, and that is your D10 dice pool. So very basic to the Storypath system, Storypath Ultra system. Here's some examples of investigation rolls. Honestly, you'll see a lot of stuff that you would have in a normal like D&D game or any other type of RPG. I want to research some stuff. I want to try and solve this puzzle. I want to look up some supernatural lore, things of that nature. You're not going to find yourself worrying about some special role that your characters are going to do. Typically, what I do is I'll have my players tell me what they want to do, and then we figure out together which skill and attribute equates to that investigation role. Just like normal skill checks in Storypath Ultra, you can add complications to investigations as a GM. You have minor, moderate, and major ones, which are cost 1, 2, and 3 hits to remove for the player. And if the player doesn't remove them, they get a negative narrative effect on it. This can be stuff like the minor one here is someone notices you're investigating and takes interest. That someone could be just like a normal person who might show up in the middle of a combat later on. Or you could have your target learns that you're investigating them, which can lead to a lot of problems when the target starts to destroy evidence or put roadblocks in front of you. There's other ones such as destroying a piece of evidence and things of that nature. I really like complications because they allow interesting stuff to happen that's a negative consequence without the plot of the story just hitting a roadblock where the players are like, well, I guess this person was too good at hiding their trail and we'll never find them. Full disclosure, I only saw the clue tag section in the Curseborne Kickstarter manuscript, so I don't know if it's the same across the board with all the other Storypath games. Let's assume so for the moment, as there is a trick to add clue tags to items. A clue tag is attached to a piece of evidence, and it determines which skills or contact tags can be used to uncover the clue. So if you were looking for, say, data on someone's computer, that would require a roll of either science or technology. And if you're going to use a contact, it has to have the informant or security tag. Now, when you use contact tags to do a search of an area for a piece of evidence, they use 8 dice versus a difficulty of 1. And it gets a +1 enhancement if that tag has an investigator tag on it, or if that contact has the investigator tag on it. Now, this is subject to change, but we'll continue on. When you roll your investigation dice pool, every die result of an 8 or better counts as a hit, with 10s counting as 2 hits. So you can spend those hits to get additional investigation tricks. These give you a better benefit. For instance, extra evidence for 1 hit gets you 1 extra piece of evidence on an investigation roll. Question and answer, which is my favorite one of these because it allows me to interact more with my players. For 1 to 3 hits, a player can ask the story guide an appropriate question per 1 question per hit roll. I say appropriate because your player could say, oh, I rolled the first investigation roll of this investigation. I want to know who did it. And you can say, well, that's not a reasonable question, but I can tell you, like, maybe how about what occupation that person had, or maybe if they were left-handed or right-handed, because that is a little bit more reasonable for this point in the plot. And then you have perfect specimen, which gives evidence an additional tag. Now, it just says tag. It doesn't say clue tag. I assume it's clue tag, but if that's not the case, that means you could also add like a weapon or armor tag to a piece of evidence, which I don't think would be very appropriate. The big one, if you are interested in speeding up an investigation, unexpected lead. For 3 hits, the players immediately gain a new lead. So typically when you do an investigation roll, no matter what, even if your players fail, I believe, they'll pick up a lead. This is because you want the plot to move forward. That's my personal opinion. I don't think it's called out specifically in the rules, but I could just be misremembering. In any case, a new lead is basically saying along the lines of, okay, we're at the crime scene. We found a matchbox to a club. That tells us where we need to go, and we go to the club next. But if you use unexpected lead, suddenly you don't have to go to the club. You can go to the next part of the story. So, oh, we were going to find out that the murderer of this, I'm using murderer just because that's what I think of with mysteries, but the murderer didn't go to the nightclub and just stay there all night. He went to a hotel, and if you would open up the matchbook, that will have the address of a hotel. So then you don't need to go to the nightclub, you just go straight to the hotel instead. And that's what unexpected lead effectively does. If you're a story guide, I highly recommend getting good at improv, because that can really help in this regard. This is a checkpoint to like and subscribe to the channel because, hey, you're awesome. You've gotten to this far in the video, and I really like the cut of your jib. So when you set up an investigation section of a game for your players, you want to determine the complexity of the mystery. Is the mystery a simple one? That only requires 3 leads. So equivalent of like 3 die rolls for your players. Major conspiracy goes up to 9. Honestly, I don't really use this that much because I just feel a mystery can resolve itself when it's narratively satisfying for the players or for the story. Like if I set up a major conspiracy for my players about vampires running the city, and they figure it out 3 leads in, I might just skip to that last lead. Once all the leads are found, the mystery is solved. So when you get to that 9th lead, your players should know what is going on. They don't need to know the context of what's going on. There's a difference between knowing that this person killed someone versus this person killed someone because they were having an affair with their spouse. Additionally, you can use unexpected lead trick if you're a player to purchase new leads to speed up the completion. I've never really set a max number of leads, but it would be good if you're a GM to maybe plot a few leads out say like, okay, I expect my players to go from the crime scene to the nightclub to the hotel to the docks or something, and be like, that's the outline of where my players should be going. Here are just some example of investigations. You have like the basic one, which I was saying earlier, which is who is the murderer. Another one might be where is the kidnapping victim, or what does this relic do? You could have a magic item that your players have, and part of the investigation is figuring out like how to activate its magic powers. You could have a simple one as much as what's the bad guy's plan. Like, you can deal with it however you want. You just need that little bit of mystery. Who's your friend dating is a perfect mystery that's in a mundane world. Is the person your friend dating a jerk or not? You could have finding out the secret ingredients to Dr. Pepper or any of those. I don't know why I said Dr. Pepper, but I'm rolling with it. So how I run investigations, usually my players will tell me what type of role they want to do. They want to say, okay, I want to search the body. I want to go through the computer, see what's on it. And I'll say, okay, that's an investigation role. Roll this skill and this attribute. Or you can argue with me on what skill and attribute you think would work better. Then we have the leads. For me, leads can be skipped if the players are clever enough. Leads are just a way of making sure that the plot still progresses. You don't want to end up in a situation where your players are tracking down a heist group or something, and then they just get stonewalled because of bad dice rolls. They might not be able to know who's in the group, why they're doing these heists, and who's paying for it, but they do know, okay, the group went to this location, so we'll find there or something. You could play a little bit with leads, now that I think about it, where if they can't figure out who the murderer is of something, the murderer commits another murder down the line. Maybe they're covering up their tracks and killed a witness or something like that. That way you can still have the players fail, but the plot of figuring out who this murderer is still present in the game. Leads often for me are scenes or locations, but they don't always necessarily have to be that. A lead might change a NPC from a friendly NPC to a hostile NPC. This could be a twist in your game, even in the opposite direction. For instance, you're tracking down who you think the murderer is, but then you find out, oh, the murderer is actually an innocent person, and because I found this lead, instead of them being hostile to me, they now that I know, they're now friendly to me. So that can really help out with thinking of leads more than just, this is a location I need the players to get to. Also, you can finish a mystery without collecting any evidence, and it is allowed to be unsatisfying. This is the stuff like going into a haunted house and trying to figure out the mystery of the ghost that is haunting the place. You might figure out how to get rid of the ghost, but maybe you don't know that the ghost is the murdered child of one of the people who owned the mansion or something, or the house. If your players aren't picking up evidence and not asking questions, that's sort of on them for not being interested enough in the mystery to like dig into it. Though I guess you could also say that it's on the story guide's it's the story guide's prerogative to make the mystery interesting in the first place for people to be looking into it. And then lastly here, the mystery complexity, which is the how to solve a mystery, is really just a guideline, in my opinion. Do what works for your group, and if your players ask the right questions and are skipping leads, feel free to like lean into that and allow them to be badasses and Sherlock Holmes and Batman's world's greatest detectives and things like that. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a Patreon. You can put $1 a month to it and you'll get the videos about a day or two earlier than everyone else. Sometimes even a week earlier, depending on how many things I have in the can. Additionally, if you want to check out any other cool videos, they'll be up here. I don't know what they'll be. Anyway, bye. Have a good one.